Have you ever worn the worst outfit you owned just to make sure someone wouldn't like you? That's exactly what Janelle did on her blind date, an oversized faded hoodie and her oldest jeans. But when Andrew Hale walked through that cafe door, something happened that neither of them expected. He saw past the dress, past the disguise, and fell for her at first sight. This is their heartwarming story. Janelle Carter had perfected the art of being invisible. At 28, this shy girl moved between substitute teaching jobs like a ghost, never staying long enough for anyone to notice her. The blind date she'd agreed to arranged by a persistent coworker felt like sentencing herself to another humiliation. So she dressed in deliberate ugliness, that faded hoodie frayed at the sleeves, designed to send one clear message: please leave quickly. Riverside Cafe buzzed around her with couples who'd figured out something she no longer believed in. Her fingers gripped a cooling mug of cocoa, while her heart built walls higher with each passing minute. Ever since Daniel, her ex-fiancé, had emptied her bank account and vanished 2 years ago, Janelle had decided that invisibility was safer than hope. The door chimed. Andrew Hale stepped inside wearing a charcoal suit that whispered wealth, but his eyes carried something unexpected: loneliness that mirrored her own. Janelle. His voice was gentle. She nodded, acutely aware of her chipped nail polish against his perfectly pressed sleeve. But as they talked, something shifted. He didn't comment on her dress, didn't judge the way she fidgeted or stumbled over words. Instead, he leaned forward and admitted, "I almost canceled 3 times today. I just wanted one evening where I could be Andrew, not the person everyone expects me to be." Something in his raw honesty cracked open a door in Janelle's heart, one she'd thought she'd permanently locked. Their conversation was stumbling towards something almost comfortable when a server passed their table, whispering just loud enough, "Oh my God, that's Andrew Hale, the CEO of Hale Innovations." The words hit Janelle like ice water. Her grip on the mug faltered. Andrew's face shifted, resignation flooding his features, like he'd been bracing for this moment all along. Janelle stood abruptly, chair scraping. "I don't belong here. This was a mistake." Her voice shook, but as she reached for her bag, Andrew spoke quietly, but with certainty. "If you're walking away just because of who I am professionally, then you haven't seen me at all." The words stopped her cold. Her legs trembled, and then impossibly she sat back down. What could make a shy girl who'd sworn off love sit back down for a man whose world seemed impossibly far from hers? The days after that blind date felt surreal. Andrew texted simple things, morning coffee photos, questions about books she loved. Nothing that screamed CEO. Just Andrew being human. But Janelle couldn't silence the voice in her head, insisting she was trespassing in a life never meant for her. When Andrew mentioned his company was developing educational toys and asked if she'd test them with students, relief flooded through her. Here was something professional, something she understood, a reason to see him that didn't require the terrifying vulnerability of wanting someone. The morning Janelle arrived at Hale Innovations, the glass building reflected clouds she felt she could never reach. The lobby's marble floors gleamed each surface, whispering that she didn't fit. Andrew met her in a sunlit conference room, his smile genuine as he spread prototypes across the table blocks, teaching coding puzzles that whispered encouragement. "I want to create things that make kids feel capable," he explained, eyes bright with purpose. Janelle picked up a wooden figure, turning it carefully. For the first time in days, she forgot her fear. Then Madison Hale entered, and the temperature dropped. Andrew's cousin, 33 and impeccably dressed, moved like she owned not just the room, but everyone in it. A VP with ambitions that stretched beyond her current title. Madison's gaze swept Janelle's discount cardigan and worn shoes with surgical precision. "Oh," she said, voice sugary with false concern. "You must be Andrew's date. How refreshingly unpretentious." Each word was designed to cut. Janelle's hands stilled on the toy. Before Andrew could respond, chaos in the form of a 6-year-old burst through the door. Miss Janelle. Noah, Andrew's nephew, launched himself at her with pure joy. He'd been in her class for 2 weeks months ago, yet somehow remembered her like she'd mattered. Janelle caught him, throat tightening. Across the room, Andrew watched with something unreadable softening his expression. Madison's smile sharpened like a blade. "Don't dream too big, substitute teacher. Andrew doesn't belong in your world." She adjusted her designer bracelet casually, but the threat was clear. As Janelle left, shame, that old familiar companion, wrapped around her shoulders. But Andrew called that night, and the next. Not about boardrooms or business, but about the 8-year-old who'd finally learned to read about the sound of rain against windows. Slowly, carefully, she began answering. Thursday afternoon at the park smelled like fresh grass and impossible possibilities. Andrew wore jeans, actually wore jeans, and they walked in comfortable silence before he asked, "Do you think I'm walking with you because I'm wealthy?" Janelle's breath caught. "I don't know, but I know I don't fit in your world." Andrew stopped walking, hands in pockets, eyes distant with memory. 3 years ago, the woman I was dating sold my story to tabloids. Personal messages, private photos, everything. I watched my life become entertainment at grocery store checkouts. His voice hollowed with old pain. After that, I stopped knowing who to trust. Everyone wanted access status, a piece of what I represented. Janelle felt something crack inside her chest. My ex-fiancé, Daniel, he took everything. My savings, my grandmother's ring, even our apartment deposit. I came home one day, and he'd vanished. With all of it. She laughed bitterly. "So yes, trusting terrifies me." Andrew met her eyes. Two people who'd built walls so high they'd forgotten what sunlight felt like. "Maybe," he said quietly, "we could try being scared together." Something in Janelle, something fragile but stubborn, wanted to believe him. This felt like the beginning of something heartwarming and real. But across town, Madison watched from her office window, phone in hand, already planning how to protect what she believed was rightfully hers. Belief Janelle was about to discover was a luxury some people couldn't afford to let her keep. The article dropped on Tuesday morning like a bomb. Broke substitute teacher leeching onto CEO Andrew Hale inside the gold digger romance rocking Hale innovations. Janelle's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped her phone. Photos everywhere, leaving his building beside him at the park, even through the cafe window on their blind date. The article painted her as a calculating opportunist who'd trapped a vulnerable, wealthy man. They called her financially desperate, questioned her motives, dissected her past. Every word designed to transform her into a villain in a story she'd never asked to join. Her classroom suddenly felt suffocating. Students read quietly, oblivious to their teacher's world imploding. She locked herself in the supply closet and wept into her hands, trying to stay silent. One article, just one, and they'd made her into everything she'd feared. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. 12 missed calls from Andrew, 15, 20. Texts flooding in. "Janelle, please answer. This isn't true. Let me fix this." But how could he fix perception? How could he undo a narrative that fit so perfectly? Poor shy girl, rich man, obvious motives. She powered off her phone and taught the rest of her day on autopilot, smiling at children while dying inside. Meanwhile, Andrew sat in an emergency meeting. Madison leaned against the conference table, perfectly composed. Stock price dropped 3 points this morning, she said, with manufactured worry. The board is questioning your judgment. If you don't handle this swiftly, they might reconsider more than just your personal choices. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Andrew's focus was elsewhere. 27 unanswered calls. Every silence felt like watching Janelle slip into the same darkness that had once swallowed his ability to trust. That evening, something unexpected happened. Noah, playing in the hallway, overheard Andrew leaving another voicemail. The boy had seen Janelle at school earlier, watched her wipe her eyes when she thought no one looked. He wandered into Andrew's office and tugged his sleeve. "Uncle Andrew." His voice was small but serious. "Miss Janelle was crying today, during story time. She went to the closet, but I heard her." Andrew's heart stopped. "She was crying." Noah nodded solemnly. "Because she thought you were upset with her. She told someone on the phone she ruined everything and you'd be better off without her." The words struck Andrew like a physical blow. While he'd fielded calls from lawyers and PR teams, Janelle had been alone, drowning in shame that wasn't hers. He grabbed his coat. "I need to go." Madison stepped forward, blocking the doorway. Andrew rushing to her makes the article look true. "Move, Madison." Something in his tone made her step aside. But when Andrew reached Janelle's apartment, she wouldn't open the door. "Please go," she called through the wood voice, wrecked. "Why, I can't do this. Every time I let someone in the world reminds me why I shouldn't. You're a CEO, I'm nobody. This was always impossible." "You're not nobody," he said to the closed door. "You're the first person in 3 years who made me remember what being human feels like instead of being a title." Silence. Then so quietly, "I'm scared." Andrew pressed his forehead against the door. "Me too. But I'm more scared of losing you without fighting for this." The door stayed closed. After an hour, Andrew left instructions with the building manager to call if Janelle needed anything. As he walked to his car, something hardened in his chest. Someone had done this deliberately, and he would find out who. The investigation took 3 days. Andrew's head of security was thorough and discreet. The trail led to an email sent from within his company's security camera, photos attached. The sender used a burner account, but metadata doesn't lie. It traced to a company device assigned to one person, Madison Hale. When Andrew confronted her, she didn't bother hiding it. "You're throwing away everything grandfather built," she hissed. "Hale Innovations needs someone appropriate at your side. That woman is a liability." "That woman," Andrew interrupted, voice like ice, "has more integrity in one gesture than you've shown in your entire career." He placed a folder on her desk, printouts of every email, every transaction, every piece of evidence. "You leaked confidential information to harm an innocent person. You violated company policy, ethics, and basic human decency." Madison's face drained of color. "You wouldn't the board. Andrew said calmly, "Receives this evidence tomorrow morning, along with your resignation, which you'll write tonight. Because if you refuse, I'll ensure every tech company in this city knows exactly what you did." Madison's hands trembled. "She'll ruin you." Andrew met her eyes without flinching. "She already saved me. You just couldn't see it." But saving someone's reputation wouldn't be enough, not when the person who needed saving most was still locked behind a door, convinced she'd never be worthy. Janelle didn't return to Hale Innovations, didn't answer Andrew's calls. For 2 weeks, she simply disappeared into her own life, the way she'd learned to do whenever the world proved too sharp. She moved through her days mechanically, teaching grading papers, eating meals she didn't taste. At night, she'd sit by her window, watching the city lights and wondering if she'd made the right choice in pulling away. Wondering if running was protection or just another form of surrender. But someone else was watching someone who'd seen the entire story unfold with the clarity that only comes with age and hard-won wisdom. Margaret Hale had been admitted to Presbyterian Hospital for a routine procedure, but nothing about her was routine. At 70, she'd outlived a Titan husband, raised a brilliant grandson largely alone, and learned to read people like novels. When Andrew visited, looking more exhausted than she'd seen in years, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders carrying weight, she recognized she knew something needed saying. "Sit down, sweetheart," she commanded, gently patting the chair beside her hospital bed. "Tell me about the teacher." Andrew sank into the chair, running hands through his hair. "She won't talk to me, Grandma. She thinks she's protecting me by staying away. She thinks she's the problem when she's the only thing that's made sense in 3 years." Margaret studied him with knowing eyes. "And you're letting her believe that I don't know how to reach someone convinced they don't deserve to be reached." His voice cracked. "How do I fight for someone who thinks the kindest thing they can do is disappear?" Margaret was quiet for a moment, her weathered hands folding over the hospital blanket. "When your grandfather courted me, my family said I was too simple for him. Too common. We didn't have money or connections or the right last name." She smiled at the memory. "I tried to break it off 3 times. Told him he deserved better. You know what he said?" Andrew shook his head. "He said, 'Margaret, you don't get to decide what I deserve. You only get to decide if you're brave enough to let me choose you.'" That changed everything. Andrew stared at his grandmother, understanding dawning. "Give me her number." Which is how on Thursday afternoon, Janelle received a call from an unknown number and heard a warm, elderly voice say, "Hello, dear. I'm Margaret Hale, Andrew's grandmother. I was hoping you might visit an old woman in the hospital. I promise I don't bite much, and I make much better company than whatever thoughts you've been keeping yourself company with lately." Janelle almost refused, but something in that voice, that knowing no-nonsense warmth, reminded her of her own grandmother, the one whose ring Daniel had stolen. So she went. Margaret's hospital room smelled like lilies and antiseptic hope. The old woman sat propped against pillows, looking far too alert for someone post-surgery, her silver hair impeccable despite the circumstances. "Sit, sit," she gestured. "Let me look at you properly." Janelle perched on the chair's edge, uncertain and feeling very much like she was about to face judgment. But Margaret's expression held no condemnation, only curiosity and something that looked like understanding. "You know," Margaret began, folding her hands, "I've watched my grandson build an empire over the past decade, made him one of the youngest CEOs in tech. Very impressive," she paused, "and very lonely. Success is wonderful, but it makes a cold bed partner." Janelle's throat tightened. "Mrs. Hale, I don't think—" "The first time in years I saw Andrew truly smile," Margaret continued as if Janelle hadn't spoken, "was when he talked about you. Not the polite smile for board meetings or the camera smile for charity galas. A real smile. The kind that reaches the eyes and changes the entire face. The kind his grandfather used to give me." She leaned forward slightly. "Do you know how rare that is, to make someone smile like that after they've forgotten how—" Tears burned behind Janelle's eyes. "I'm afraid of hurting him," she whispered. "The world sees me as someone using him. Maybe they're right to be suspicious. Maybe I am a mistake waiting to happen. Everything I touch seems to fall apart eventually." Margaret reached out and took Janelle's hand with surprising strength. Her skin was papery but warm, her grip certain. "That pain wasn't caused by you, dear girl. That tabloid, that gossip, the cruelty, none came from your heart. It came from someone who can't stand watching others find what she's never had. She squeezed gently. But you may be the one who helps it end. Not by being perfect or fitting some impossible mold, but by being exactly who you are. Someone real in a world that taught my grandson everyone was performing. The tears Janelle had held back spilled over. I don't know if I'm brave enough. I don't know if I'm strong enough to stand next to someone like him and not get crushed by the pressure. Bravery, Margaret said softly, isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that what you're fighting for matters more than what scares you. And strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and choosing to heal anyway. She paused, letting that sink in. I think Andrew matters to you, doesn't he? Janelle nodded, unable to speak. Then maybe, Margaret suggested, it's time to stop running from mattering to someone who sees you. Because that's the real gift, isn't it? Being seen, being chosen. Not despite your fears, but alongside them. When Janelle left the hospital 2 hours later, she'd learned about Margaret's own story about judgment she'd faced, about choosing love over fear, about building a life with someone who saw past social expectations to the person beneath. Something had shifted in Janelle's chest. The fear remained, probably always would. But underneath it, fragile as new leaves, was something else. Hope. An inspirational kind of hope she'd thought was lost forever, the kind that whispered, maybe, just maybe, she deserved good things too. She turned her phone back on. 43 missed calls from Andrew. Texts she'd been too afraid to read. And one from 3 minutes ago, I know you need space. But I found who leaked the article. It's over. She's gone. And I'm holding a press conference tomorrow to set the record straight. You don't have to be there. You don't have to do anything. But I need you to know I'm fighting for us, even if you're not ready to. You don't get to decide what I deserve. You only get to decide if you're brave enough to let me choose you. Janelle stared at the message until her vision blurred. The last line, those words, felt like they'd been pulled straight from her conversation with Margaret. Had they talked about her? Had Andrew's grandmother been deliberately planting seeds? It didn't matter. What mattered was the truth in those words. Then she did something she hadn't done in 2 weeks. She called him back. Janelle? Andrew's voice cracked with relief and disbelief. Janelle, is that really you? I'm here, she said quietly. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I let fear make my decisions. You have nothing to apologize for. Andrew, she cut him off gently. I met your grandmother today. She told me about how she and your grandfather met, about the choice she had to make. A pause, then a soft laugh close to tears. Of course you did. She has a way of interfering exactly when it matters most. Did she tell you the story about the rose garden? 3 times, Janelle said, and despite everything, she found herself smiling. She's very thorough. She told me you smile differently when you talk about me. Janelle continued, her voice softer now. She could hear him breathing, gathering words. She's right. You make me remember what it feels like to be myself. Not the CEO everyone expects. Not the heir to a legacy. Just Andrew. Still scared and scarred, but somehow still hoping. Still believing that maybe good things can happen to people who've been hurt. Janelle closed her eyes. The press conference tomorrow. You don't have to come. I'll handle it. I'll clear your name and make sure everyone knows I want to be there, she interrupted. Not in front of cameras, but somewhere I can watch. Because if you're fighting for us, Andrew, I need to see it. I need to believe it's real. I need to learn how to be brave enough to let you choose me. The silence felt like the world holding its breath. It's real, Janelle. It's the most real thing I've felt in years, and I will spend however long it takes proving that to you. Then I'll be there, she promised, hidden in the back, but there. That night, Andrew barely slept. He'd spent 3 years protecting himself from vulnerability, building walls, keeping distance. And tomorrow he'd stand before 50 reporters and confess he'd let someone in. That he'd fallen for a substitute teacher at first sight, not because of how she dressed for their blind date, but because underneath that protective armor he'd glimpsed someone real, someone kind, someone worth fighting for. Tomorrow he'd prove them all wrong, but proof would require more than words. It would require something he'd sworn never to risk again, his complete, unguarded truth. The press conference room packed with reporters who smelled scandal. Hale Innovations had called an emergency briefing, and speculation had run wild for 24 hours. Was the CEO stepping down? Was there a crisis? Was this about the substitute teacher? Andrew walked to the podium in a gray suit that suddenly felt like armor he no longer needed. His hands were steady as he adjusted the microphone. Somewhere in the back, hidden behind a camera crew, Janelle watched with her heart in her throat. "Thank you all for coming," Andrew began. "I'll make this brief and clear. 2 weeks ago, an article was published accusing someone I care about of being opportunistic. That article was false. It was also cruel, calculated, and entirely my responsibility to address." A murmur rippled through the room. Janelle's breath caught. "It was my responsibility," Andrew continued, "because I failed to protect someone who deserved protection. I built a company worth billions, but I couldn't keep one good person from being torn apart by gossip I should have anticipated. The article was leaked by someone within my own organization, someone who believed class and wealth determine a person's value. That person no longer works here." Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Andrew held up a hand. "Janelle Carter is a substitute teacher who moves between schools, making sure kids who need her most get a chance to feel seen. She doesn't network at galas or collect powerful connections. She shows up every day for 8-year-olds learning to read and 6-year-olds learning they matter." His voice grew quieter, more intense. "She met me at a cafe in an oversized hoodie because she was trying not to be noticed. And I fell for her at first sight, precisely because she didn't want anything from me except honesty. This shy girl who thought she needed to dress down to protect herself. She's braver than anyone I know." The room had gone silent. Even camera shutters seemed to pause. The narrative was that she was using me. The truth is, I'm the one who's been given a gift. I don't deserve a chance to be seen as human by someone whose trust I'd give everything to earn. Andrew's eyes found the back of the room, found the shadow he knew was Janelle. "If anyone wants to question someone today, question me. My judgment, my choices, my decisions. But leave her alone. Because wealth can't measure character. Success can't measure worth, and the most valuable thing I've gained this year wasn't in any quarterly report. It was learning how to trust again. It's been the most heartwarming experience of my life." He stepped back from the podium. "That's all I have to say. Thank you." Questions exploded like fireworks, but Andrew was already walking away. He didn't stop until he reached the hallway where Janelle stood frozen against the wall, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did." He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "You believe me now, that this is real?" Janelle nodded, unable to speak. Andrew smiled, that real smile his grandmother had talked about, the one that changed his whole face. "Good. Because I have one more thing to handle, and I need you to know I meant every word." That afternoon, in a closed-door board meeting, Andrew presented a detailed report of Madison's ethics violations. The evidence was irrefutable: leaked emails, security breaches, calculated attempts to manipulate company reputation for personal gain. Madison sat white-faced as board members reviewed page after page. "Ms. Hale," the board chairman said coldly, "you are hereby terminated from all positions at Hale Innovations, effective immediately. We will be recommending that relevant professional organizations review your conduct. Your succession opportunities are permanently revoked." Madison's composure finally shattered. "You're destroying me for some nobody." "I'm holding you accountable," Andrew said calmly, "for attacking an innocent person to serve your ambition. Character matters, Madison, and yours has been found wanting." As security escorted her out, Andrew felt no triumph, just exhaustion and relief. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about ensuring cruelty had consequences and kindness had protection. That evening, his phone buzzed with a text from Janelle. "Thank you for all of it, for seeing me." He typed back, "Thank you for letting me." And then, because he was done with half measures, "Can I see you tomorrow? No crowds, no cameras, just us." Her response came 3 heartbeats later. Just us sounds perfect, but just us, they were about to discover, was actually the beginning of we. And that made all the difference. 3 months passed, like gentle rain after a drought, slowly washing away the damage, leaving everything cleaner. Janelle kept teaching, kept moving between schools. But now when Andrew called, she answered. When he asked her to dinner, she said yes. And gradually, the shy girl who'd worn ugliness as armor began to let herself be seen. On a Thursday afternoon, Andrew stood outside Janelle's current school, watching through the window as she worked with a reading group. 6 kids sat in a circle, struggling through a picture book about a lion who'd lost his roar. Janelle's voice was patient, encouraging, never rushed. When a little girl finally sounded out "courage" correctly, the pride on Janelle's face could have lit entire cities. Andrew understood, watching her, why children trusted her instantly. She didn't perform. She simply showed up, present and real. When the bell rang and kids poured out to waiting parents, 2 of Janelle's students ran to hug her. "Miss Janelle, my mom says we love school because of you," one exclaimed. Janelle laughed, the sound free and genuine, kneeling to hug them back. "You love school because you're brave readers," she corrected gently. "I just get to watch you shine." She looked up and saw Andrew leaning against the doorframe, watching with an expression that made her heart stumble. After the children scattered, she walked over slowly. "How long were you standing there?" "Long enough to see why kids write you thank you notes," he said softly. "You make people feel capable." Janelle ducked her head, still unused to praise. "It's just teaching. It's not just anything." Andrew reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. "I have something for you. Not a gift exactly, more like a possibility." Janelle unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a silver key, simple and unadorned. She looked up, confused. "It's not the key to my house?" Andrew clarified, smile gentle. "It's the key to a workspace at Hale Innovations. We're starting an educational foundation, creating toys and programs for underfunded schools. I want someone to run it who actually understands kids. Someone who knows what it means to show up for people nobody notices." Janelle stared at the key vision blurring. "Andrew, I'm not qualified." "You're exactly qualified. You've been doing this work without resources or recognition for years. I'm just offering support and a platform." He paused, voice dropping. "And honestly, I'm terrified you'll say no, but I'm more terrified of not asking." She turned the key over in her palm, feeling its weight. "I'm still scared," she whispered. "Of your world, of not being enough." "I know." Andrew stepped closer, not touching her, just being near. I'm scared too. Every day. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe alone. Janelle looked up at him, this man who'd stood before 50 reporters and called her valuable, who'd fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself, who saw her, truly saw her, and didn't turn away. Who'd fallen for her at first sight, not because of how she dressed for their blind date, but because of who she was underneath. Not just in your world, she said quietly. I want us to build something together, something that matters. Andrew's smile could have melted winter. Us. I really like the sound of that. As sunset poured through the classroom windows, painting everything gold, Janelle stepped forward and let herself be held. Not as someone who needed saving, but as someone who'd saved herself and chosen to share that strength with another person doing the same. Outside, the world continued spinning. But inside that empty classroom, two people who'd learned to hide finally allowed themselves to be seen, and that changed everything. It was heartwarming and inspirational in the truest sense, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone in. And sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a blind date, a faded dress, and the courage to sit back down when every instinct tells you to run.